is everyone? You'll have to adjust me because I can't really hear. I've been praying that God would just release my head pressure. So if that happens while I'm speaking, I got extra tissues and ready to do that. So whenever the healing wants to come, I'll take it. I don't know how many of us, 2 weeks ago, we had a Vacation Bible School kids camp here. And I'd like to call this cold the VBS virus that we all caught. A lot of us shared it. And it seemed to hit me a week late. But anyways, so I apologize. But I really felt like God wanted me to share this message today on Sabbath. And as soon as I say the word Sabbath, what do you all think of? I heard Sunday. Day of rest. Yeah. But actually the word Sabbath is actually the Jewish word Shabbat, which means to cease. There's a difference between rest and ceasing. And so I want to talk to you about that discipline as being a disciple. You led in well for me, Rob. I also want to say, I think it was a few weeks ago, I talked about how we don't like to go to church if the central air isn't working. I apologize for that comment, as this morning that one is leaking and it is not on. And I just said, whoa, it's really hot in here. He has a funny way of showing us the comforts of this day and age. And, you know, we live in the time where we have the most convenience we've ever had. We have an app for everything people just used to do naturally. I literally saw there's this new app, which I probably need, where it tells you how to clean your house, like what to do your projects. It talks about this lady from Harvard has set it up, and I have done all these projects, but I haven't thought about one thing to do. I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, I probably need that I tend to be a little scatterbrained, and I start a project here, and then I go here, and then it's just, my husband and I are polar opposites in that direction. He plows one way, and I tend to be scattered. But in today and age, but there isn't an app to tell us to cease, but isn't there? I mean, my Apple Watch, I don't have it on today, but remember when the setting came out, it told you to breathe, told you to stand up? Are we that dumb? I mean, if you think about it, we have become so overcome with the busyness and life and how our productivity that doesn't look like actual action and work, physical work, a lot of us, and how we do our jobs, that we have to have technology to help us be human. And so, as Christians, anybody say, I'm so busy? I think BJ actually spoke about that. When the summer comes, we have 3 weeks, or 3 months, hopefully more than 3 weeks, of nice weather in the North Country, so you got to get the garden in, and in our case, the food plots plotted and plowed, and the trees planted, and all the things. You have to get the wood cut and ready for winter, or however that means. You know what I mean? Whatever happened over the winter, we got to get ready for the next thing. We got to have all the barbecues and all the get-togethers and all the things. It's busy. It's like we've got to lay the concrete before the ground starts to freeze again. That's kind of how we live in this day and age, and or in this area. It's reality. I'm not saying it's not busy and that we don't have to do that, but do you know that God created for how many days? 6, and on the seventh day he rested. Actually, the instruction is, but let's read what it says, because I think we skip over this part of it. On the seventh day, Genesis 2:2, on the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, so he rested from all his work. He ceased from all his work. Thank you. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy. Say holy. Because it was a day when he rested from all the work of creation. The first thing God called holy was a block of time set aside to rest, to stop, to cease. We don't call that holy naturally. We call, is it hard to stop and to cease? And nobody else. You're in town, so now you need to make your Walmart run, your Aldi's run, grab that prescription from the pharmacy, and then we'll stop at Grandma's, and then we'll head home. It's Sunday. Used to go to church and fellowship. This is a perfect day because we have a church picnic after, so we can all go head over to the Langdons and hang out, and you'll all feel guiltless about your day, that unless you're the one that has too much to do to go to the church picnic. And cease. No judgment, really, no judgment, but whatever works for you. But I'm kind of getting off. Sabbath is not merely a day of rest, but it was God's invitation for us to cease striving. There's a strive that we have, and I think it's just as much in creation can point out. Pastor Greg always likes to point out that we were created for work. And that is true. We were created to be productive people. The Bible, a lot of times, I used to use this on my kids. It says, a lazy man shouldn't eat. So go do your chores, because it says you shouldn't eat if you don't do work. I mean, those are principles. That is a good thing. You should work to eat. I mean, it's not a bad thing. But I think also we live in a culture, maybe I grew up in a house where work was, your work ethic was everything. Your work ethic was everything. My husband was a farmer. They worked really hard. My husband's family was farmers. Nobody's going to say we weren't hard workers. That's just not a typical thing. That would be the worst insult if I was to be said I wasn't a hard worker. So this is actually something where what happens when we want to follow Jesus is we have to recalculate our mindset to have a biblical mindset and a biblical worldview and not a secular one. And you're all like, of course, I'm a Christian. That's what I'm going to do. No, we live in a culture. Do you know it was up until the 1970s? It's really when actually the stores started opening on Sundays. It was called the Blue Laws. There was literal laws in our country, in this country and other countries too, where everything was shut down on Sundays. The country actually made way for the ceasing to happen. We're going to go into Exodus 20 next, but another important point I want to make about that, just keep that in your back pocket about the blue laws, is that God created the Sabbath before sin even entered the world. God called us to rest. He didn't just call us to do it, He did it. And if He did it, we should do it too. There should be something in us that follows what He did. The first thing God calls holy wasn't a place, but time. And that was, we call it Sunday, but really it used to be Saturday, or it was the seventh day. I love this. I came across this. This is not my own, but God created human beings, not merely human doings. We weren't called human doings. We're called human beings. Just be. And how hard is that as us to stop being? And some of it is because we don't want to stop the noise inside of our heads. How many of you, whatever you're doing, you're playing a podcast or music or something? I like to multitask and be productive, multi-productive. I'm usually listening to something about, this week it would be something about Sabbath as I'm doing the dishes, or we're doing. We even when we're doing the mundane things, we live in a time and age where we stick things in our ear to just function to do anything. We don't even sit with God. We don't even quiet ourselves. And I'm not saying that's not good, because worship music and listening to the Bible and all those things are good. But do we take that time to cease? Sabbath is actually a reminder to pause on what our true identity is. Our productivity, what you do for a job, is not your identity. As Christians, our identity is child of God, saved and redeemed by the Creator of the world through His Son. We have to remember that. That's a ceasing. And holiness only begins in God's presence. It cannot happen in productivity. I know that reminding time can't happen in the productivity of every day. 6 days, you're busy. The 7th. Do you see what I'm saying? We are to be productive people. That's not what I'm saying. But somewhere in our days, we need to have that quiet pause. And somewhere in our week, we need to, used to be Sunday because everything shut down around us, but a lot of people, half the congregation is probably working today. That's why they're not here. That's reality. Today doesn't really feel like a day of rest for me. Sounds more of a work day. We go to Exodus, not only did God say it right in the beginning, but in the 10 Commandments. Let's go over to Exodus 20, the 10 Commandments. This really popped out to me if you actually read it. It's kind of something that we're like, oh, if I said to you, do you obey the 10 Commandments? You would probably say, now you're like, because Sabbath is in there, you're struggling right now to say yes. But, you know what I mean? It's like you could read that list of things and be like, oh, I'm pretty good at that. And when culture used to set up a day where you went to church and you went home and had family dinner and you rested. The TVs didn't get turned on. I grew up and had an uncle. My older siblings will talk about going to Uncle Ray's house where no TV went on, no reading books. They just sat. It was literally like a day of rest. They would eat, obviously, and be together as a family, but there wasn't a lot of action going on. There was a real remembering. But in Exodus 20, verse 8, it says, remember to observe the Sabbath days by keeping it holy. Remember, God called this holy? We have to keep it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but on the 7th day is the Sabbath day of rest. Dedicate it to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants. That's where I stop. I'm like, that's my problem. Am I the only one? I don't have any servants that are doing my stuff, so I have to do my stuff. Okay, that's supposed to be funny. But I really do, take that up with God. My dream would be to have a cleaning lady. For in 6 days the Lord made, actually, the livestock and any foreign living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in it. But on the 7th day He rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. If you're looking at this in your Bible, if you notice, it's verse 8, but it's the 5th commandment. It's the 5th of the 10 commandments, and it is the longest one He said the most about. So this one, I was like, before I got into this, I'd be like, yeah, I observe the Sabbath. No, I don't do the ceasing thing like He's talking to me about. This is a discipline I desire in my life. Notice that the command is to remember, because we naturally forget. If you look out through Scripture, especially the Old Testament, you'll see things, and they placed stone. Help me, my brain. Altars and things to remember. Remember, this is the place of. There was altars that they built to remember. God was into reminding us of His faithfulness. Today, BJ did that for us in worship. He's like, if God has ever been this in your life, then shout it out. If Jesus is every day. And I hope in our brains we're thinking of things that we have overcome because of Him. Do you know we were never meant to build a life? that life is a gift? The Bible doesn't tell us to build a life. It gives us instruction for life, but it does not tell us to build a life. You can be so busy building that you don't receive the gift of it. Some personalities, I think, do this easier than others. But life is a gift. You know those people that's just like, happy I'm alive today. I'm like, my ears plugged, I'm coughing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my first thing. Like, I woke up breathing. You know what I mean? It is a gift. Life is a gift. And I think different times we really can observe that when life hits you with a circumstance and it stops you dead in your tracks. God doesn't want us to remember these things when life hits and something tragic happens, that we remember life as a gift. He wants us to remember it weekly. And I think what's important about gathering together as a body of believers in this remembrance is because we have to remember our identity. Because Jesus knew out in this world, God knew that we would get off track, that our cultures would get us off track. Their cultures were no different than our cultures, just technology. I read somewhere as I was reading this, he's like, do you think God panicked when the smartphone happened? We say technology today. Oh, the iPads, oh, the this, oh, the that. We blame it on things, and God's not like, yeah, that's a problem. God doesn't think they're a problem. You might have a problem with them. Just like other things in life aren't a problem unless you have a problem with them. Many things can be a problem if you have a problem with them. That's why you pause on Sabbath and reflect. Where's my identity? Where am I missing the mark? We talked to the kids about sin, gave this demonstration, and they were shooting an arrow, and they were all supposed to miss the center target of the cross, but one hit it. Because the idea is that sin is just missing the mark. So we might not have these huge sins we've overcome, but we're all missing the mark somewhere. And this might be one that across the board, as Christians in America, we're definitely missing the mark because culture does not allow us to have this space in our life. We have to create this. So it used to be the good old days. Now I would say, my husband would say, he is born in the wrong century. And I would totally agree with that. Except he wouldn't be married to me. Because I like the century of convenience a little more. But I did run on a generator for a season of our marriage. But the Sabbath has to become a weekly celebration. That's what Sunday mornings are, a celebration. But we have to have that day of the week where we're celebrating God's goodness, His creation, getting out in it, His provision, God's restoration. Did you know Sabbath, the ceasing, is to remember His restoration? He's a restoring God. We need to restore our bodies, our minds, and our souls. He's like, you got to pause. You can only go so fast, so far, for so long. And then your body takes you out. Before that time, or your soul, or your mind, or things, or your marriage, or things start to fall apart. It's also to remind us of God's covenant with His people. You know, it was His covenant. I really, really, really enjoyed kind of reading about what Sabbath looked like to the Jewish people. Sabbath wasn't merely about stopping work. It was about celebrating God's restoring work. And they did a lot of details, and I'm not getting into that, but there was just a little bit. I like these words in this. Christy McLeland, in her book, Feasting on God's Word, she has a part about fasting in here, and it says, it's beautiful to envision Jesus 2,000 years ago growing up in a home and culture in which he and his siblings watched their mother light the Sabbath candles, welcoming Sabbath into their home like a bride. Jesus comes from a world where wisdom is personified as a woman, and his mother had the honor of ushering in Sabbath. No doubt this shaped and informed his view of Okay, that's not really the part I wanted to highlight, but it talks about how, up above it, let me just say, in rabbinic tradition holds that the mother has the honor because the mother brings light and hope into the home. So actually, we know that we do create this space in our home as women, right? That's our job to do, and so that she would have the honor of lighting the candle, and that would signify the start of Shabbat, the lighting of the flames. This is the part that I really love. For thousands of years, Jewish people had gathered around firelight, telling and retelling and remembering their stories of God's faithfulness, faithful records in their lives. One of this girl's favorite activities is to sit around a fire pit with the friends. Something lovely happens in the human soul when we sit together around a flame, allowing ourselves to be pulled into some sort of beautiful invitation. Flame and Sabbath seem to go together. There's a harmony between the two. I think we talk about that. I don't remember where we were. Just at a small group this week, at the beginning of the week, and we were sitting around a campfire, and everybody had agreed they could sit there forever. It was hard to leave. It's hard to leave watching a fire. There's just a calming. What are you sharing? Sharing God's stories. This is what Jesus is inviting us into, is is creating a space in order to do this. And I think this is culturally, they had a role as the woman of the home, that they would light the candles and they would start their Shabbat on Friday night, and it would go into sundown on Saturday night. So they had this tradition, their culture made it. You know what? They would sit around, if you think about it, they would have scrolls, but everybody didn't have access to the Bible, so they'd retell the stories of the Bible. Do we retell our God stories to our kids? When's the last time you told when's the last time you told your kids about a time God got you through something? Guilty. You know what I mean? Do we sit around and share our God stories intentionally with people? And I don't mean it just has to be your family. I'm talking about church family. Do we make access for that? And even if we're sitting around a fire, are we talking about what's on the news, or are we talking about the good news? Are we, because what does it say? It's restorative. It's restorative. When I sit around and all of a sudden we start telling God stories to each other, nothing greater than to hear somebody's testimony about where God's brought them. Looking at Mark thinking, hey, I want to catch up, see what God's been doing in his life. That's like hope. You know, we had some stuff going on in my our personal life this week, but all of a sudden I get a text from Juan. He's like, we had 22 kids at youth. I was like, that's what's important right now. God is working in our youth and growing them in the summer. I'm excited about that. He's growing our youth group. He's growing things. We're having bridge kids that are about ready to blow up. That's our middle school. This is exciting news. We had 215 people here last Sunday celebrating VBS. 108 kids walked through our doors that heard the good news. There's a time to cease. I'm going to talk about that because we go and go and go, and sometimes we do that in ministry. We go and we go and we go. So I'm going to tell you that August 3rd, that week of August 3rd, is Sabbath week here at church. I didn't know it was 2 weeks out from VBS when we planned it, but it is. I thought it was the week after to give us a cleanup week this last week, and maybe for everybody to get over this cold. And then maybe that's why, because God knew. He's like, you got to recover from this. But we're going to take a Sabbath here at the church. We're going to have Sunday services. We're not going to have Wednesday service. No men's group, no groups, unless you want to organically get together. I think the ladies' Bible study is going to finish their last group because it's the last day. Rosie asked for permission. Then they will Sabbath after that and have a break. But it's a principle that we need to place in our church body, too, that we cease. So staff, everything, we won't be around that week. That's not to that's not just vacation. That's Sabbath. That's pause. It gives the worship team a break. Yes, what happens is when you go into a week of Sabbath, what do you have to do? When you go into a day of Sabbath, if you're not cooking and cleaning and doing all the things, then you have to prepare for that. There is a preparation that happens too, but that culturally in biblical times, they prepared for the Sabbath to be a break. You see this through the Old Testament. Do you remember that God fed them with manna? And he gave them a little extra before the day before Sabbath and told them to collect a little extra and it wouldn't go bad that day. God must really care about this if he even works it into his miracles. And it's not something, it's kind of like we like the freedom of Jesus, but we forget the principles that God put in place. Nobody would say, I can literally hear people, including the one I live with, probably telling me why it's really hard to give up a day. I'm not preaching at my husband today, but maybe. Because there's so much to get done. There's so much to get done. But have you ever seen when we give God that moment, or that time, that day, you also know that your wife and your kids and your family, no matter how old or young they are growing way too fast? There's time to pause. There's nothing greater you can give your kids than God's stories around a campfire or a candle. I'm not talking about a whole day. I'm talking about what if it was your Sunday evening ritual where you paused and lit a candle. I don't know what it looks like for you. Sabbath is not about rules or rituals. Sabbath is about ceasing and figuring it out for your house. I want to challenge you to do that. I'm really struggling with my cough drop. How do we honor the Sabbath? In Isaiah 58:13, let me read this because I think this is where the to-dos, I'm starting to get to the to-dos. I hope you understand why we should. I just touched on it. Keep the Sabbath day holy. Don't pursue your own interest on that day, but enjoy the Sabbath and speak of it with delight as the Lord's holy day. Delight, you overly productive people. The pause. Honor the Sabbath in everything you do on that day, and don't follow your own desires or talk idly. And at first I was like, I don't know what that talk idly meant, but I was like, hey, that's where we got to tell our God stories. Don't talk about the randomness. Stop arguing over whether you should buy that or do that. No, cease that kind of conversation. Cease the figuring out the schedules and the daily connections. You need to do that, but that's not what this moment's for. It's turning from our own agenda, delighting in God's day, honoring him with our words and actions, and choosing his desire above our own. This means go jump in the swimming pool with your kids. We're not talking about not having fun. I just mean like doing something that's out of the ordinary, pausing. You can throw your kids in the pool and still tell them God stories at the same time. Aren't we blessed? Hey, when mom and dad got married, we didn't even have, we ran on a generator and we didn't have this and this. God has really blessed us. Or this land we live on, Papa and Grandma bought this farm back in 19 whatever when they first were married. And now we live on a portion of it. And we tell our children and our grandchildren and on about God's goodness and faithfulness. But you know what? Your Papa and Grandma, they always gave to the Lord every single week. They outgave most Christians today on nothing. Very few of you know my in-laws, but those that do, they're the most faithful people I ever met. And they would say, when they didn't have that tithe money, someone would show up with hay money on Sunday morning. Because it was a miracle after miracle. Their faithfulness, God saw their provision. And life was not easy for them. But God's faithfulness, but they honor the Sabbath. I actually asked my husband, I'm like, you didn't do hay and stuff on Sunday, right? Like, was that true? And he's like, yeah. And mom and dad usually took a nap. Like, they did Sabbath in their house. People over for dinner. I'm sure they ate well, and they went to church Sunday night. That they practiced that. I wish we had done better with that in our own family. I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm being honest. The Sabbath isn't about losing a day. It's about gaining your soul back. But I actually like it's about gaining your identity back. Because if you're a worker, whatever you do for a job, it's like 24/7 if you're even in parenting, but our job becomes our identity, right? Becomes who you are. What's the first thing you usually say to somebody? Hi, I'm so-and-so. What do you do? What do you do? Yeah, BJ gives them a hug. But you usually ask somebody, what do you do? Where do you live? Like some sort of identity-focused thing. And so what do we usually spill out of our mouth? Our job. It's the first thing we say, our job. It's 6 days a week. It's our identity. I don't think it's bad. I'm just saying it becomes our identity so much that we have to pause and remember who we are in Him. That's why gathering together is so important. But I know there was a bunch of rituals and a bunch of rules and things around the Sabbath. And the religious people, what did they attack Jesus with? The Sabbath. They're like, ha ha, we got you. You broke the Sabbath. Let's look at this. Because the religious people got so into the hundreds of rules around God's gift. We don't put rules around this gift. You know, rules are easy. I guess if is anybody in here the type of person that'd be like, can you just give me like an agenda for a Sunday that would look like a Sabbath, and I would like that, and then I'll try to follow that, and won't have to think about it. Okay, yes, I got some people. Thank you. Give me a to-do list. Rosie's like, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to rebel against that. Sorry, you were shaking your head, and your husband raised his hand. I would kind of like, I'm with you, Shane. Tony's with Rosie, I'm sure. Like, I'd be like, okay, just show me how to do it. I'm going to do it right. This isn't about doing it right. Because for some of us, it might be us going and picking the garden together. Is that productive? Absolutely. But is that slow? Is that enjoying God's creation? Is that community together? Is that a blessing? Yes. Maybe it's not the day we weed the whole garden. Do you know what I mean? But it doesn't mean something you enjoy. I'm not saying don't be productive. If you have to sit behind a desk all week long, get out and do something. I've heard that if your job, if your lifestyle, if your job keeps you sedentary most of the time, then your Sabbath should look active. And if your job keeps you very active, your Sabbath should look restful. Does that make sense? Like, there's got to be something in there like that switches us. But let's look at Jesus really quick, and then Matthew 12. I like when Jesus puts the Pharisees in this place. At that time, Jesus was walking through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, so they began breaking off some heads of grain and eating them. But some of the Pharisees saw them doing it and protested. Look at your disciples are breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath. They had to be snotty. I'm just guessing. And Jesus said to them, haven't you read in the scriptures what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He went into the house of God, and he and his companions broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread, and only the priests are allowed to eat. And haven't you read the law of Moses? That the priest on duty in the temple may work on the Sabbath? I tell you, there is one here that is even greater than the temple. But you would not have condemned my innocent disciples if you knew the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath. I love this. Jesus he's just like, that's what I'm saying. Pick the garden was a perfect lead into that, wasn't it? Didn't even work that in. But like, you're hungry. Grab a little something. You couldn't do that. You couldn't snap a grain. Like, that was against the rules. Jesus came and was like, I didn't come for the rules. But we sometimes pick on the Pharisees, and I like to too, because it's probably human nature. But the Pharisees were following the rules they knew. They didn't intimately know Jesus. His disciples felt freedom to snap it and eat it with him right there. They had grasped that freedom, which Robert talked about, being a disciple. They saw it. They had that freedom. They knew that he was over the Sabbath. And he went along. Jesus removed the burden of Sabbath and restored the blessing of it. It's not a burden. I think like when my brothers and sisters talk about having to sit and do nothing, it kind of felt like a burden as a kid. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird, we can't do anything. Like, I think that was like too much, in my opinion, in a way. You know what I mean? But there was a ceasing. There might be quiet play or something where we just calm ourselves down. Mark 2:27, obviously right after that too, Jesus heals on the Sabbath. We know that, they try to catch him up in that too. He's like, well, if your sheep falls into a trench, get it. If your cow, if something happens, go take care of it. It doesn't mean you don't take care of people. It doesn't mean if your neighbor's some fence blows over into their pool, you don't run over and you build a fence on a Sunday. Can't do it at Sabbath. No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying we're human. We do what we need to do. Be help. Be his hands and feet when he presents that in front of you. But I like Mark 2:27, and I think this is what we really, really have to focus on. 2 verse 27. Then Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of the people, not the people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. Let me say that again. The Sabbath was made to meet the needs of the people and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. Just like Apple wants to teach us how to take a pause, deep breathe, all these things, these ceasing things that apps and things want to do for us, God has already put in place on the seventh day of creation. There was already that cease. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The Sabbath wasn't made for us to follow rules. It wasn't I have to go to church. I have to do this. God gave us, this is a gift of Sabbath. It's a gift of rest. It's a gift of pause. Jesus constantly healed, restored, and showed mercy on the Sabbath because restoration has always been God's purpose. What restores your soul? What restores you? It might be getting on your tractor and tilling a food plot that day. Unless your wife thinks that you haven't had enough family time. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not work. It's something you're doing. Like, hey, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a hike. Maybe you need some time alone. There's a time to celebrate and a time where Jesus went aside. Jesus wasn't looking for a ritual. He was, again, inviting people into a relationship. Sabbath is about relationship. I've already said that, not a ritual. Think of your anniversary. Ours is coming up. You don't celebrate because you're required to. Well, I hope not. Anyways. You celebrate because it matters to you. You celebrate. I was thinking about this. You know, it's the same with God. We talk about this intimate relationship with him. You celebrate because that means something. And if we didn't have anniversaries and things where we paused or date nights and things, it doesn't happen. Anybody else? Life just goes. We were never really great about doing this. Half the time I was at youth camp because August 16th is our anniversary. For probably 15 years of our marriage, I was at youth camp during that. And we try to do something on a different day. We're going away this year. Well, no, we'll be here speaking that day. But before that, then we're going away again. But we celebrate his faithfulness in our marriage. We celebrate his faithfulness of the years that he's brought you together. You renew intimacy. You reconnect. You delight in one another's in presence. Same with God. He calls us Sabbath, so we have these moments of celebration, these moments of renewal. How many of you can say your anniversary day has been some of the biggest fights you've ever had? Okay, nobody's going to admit it. Dan Myers did. Have you ever tried to plan this thing and then right before it's like things blow up? Because the enemy does not want that intimacy to happen. He does not want that celebration to happen. How hard is it to get to church Sunday morning? The kid who always puts their shoes on never puts their shoes on. The baby who never is blown out a diaper blows out 2 in a row. Or if you got twins, they both do. Like, it's just how life goes. You have to name the tactics and still create the space. Don't let him win with our time. The first thing God called holy was Sabbath, which is time. He's a jealous God. We can read that in the scriptures because he wants our time. You don't come to church for a ritual or something to do. It's because he wants to renew you. He wants to restore you. He wants to remind you. He wants to celebrate with you. Because I don't know about you, but 6 days out of the week, everything else is coming at you. Thank God the mail doesn't even cease anymore. You get packages on Sunday now. Emails. We live in a, it's like they come. I get church emails on Sunday morning. Heather and I love those. Like, stop asking us for stuff. We're not talking about you guys. We're talking about, like, bookkeeping stuff. Like, on a Sunday morning. Really? Like, leave me alone. And I don't mean that to be, she's with me. And God bless you, David, if you're watching. But it's like, why are you talking to me today? This is Sunday. This is Sabbath. Like, get annoyed. Enough to change and cease. Get enough with what culture says we have to gain, but we lose everything else. Do you see why Jesus said you have to stop? Why God put that in place? There's a ceasing. Do you think God needed to rest? News alert, he's God. He didn't get exhausted by creating the world. He didn't. He's like, we're just going to chill today. If God needed to chill, so do you. Probably twice as long, if you're anything like me. Sometimes the most spiritual thing we can simply do is cease and spend time with him. And Sabbath is how we learn to rest. Sabbath is not rest. Sabbath is how we learn to rest. Have you ever, went on a long hike with the kids or done something really fun for the day or go have dinner with girlfriends or you and your husband go and you were up late and you should be exhausted, but you just feel re-energized? You ever stay up too late around a campfire chatting and the next morning you should be more tired, but it was so fun that it filled you up? That's what we're talking about. Some of our small groups do a really good job at this on Sunday afternoons. You know, Hebrews 4, I'm running out of time, is more about the rest. Sabbath is I'm just going to give you my points really quick. Hebrews teaches us there is still a Sabbath rest for God's people. It talks about a couple different Sabbaths in this rest in this section of Hebrews 4. I would encourage you to go read it. But when we stop striving to earn God's approval, we discover the rest only Jesus can give. It's not an approval thing. That's why I can't give you a to-do list. Jesus is like, snap the grain, heal the hand, chill out. Stop worrying about whether you're doing it right and just do it. Try to make it happen. Moms, this will be hard for us because something's going to happen the first time we try to light that candle. I'm going to tell you that. Something's going to go down. Like the dishwasher is going to start leaking all over the kitchen floor. That's life, right? Like when we try to do things, nobody else's house. Okay. But true Sabbath is anchored in Jesus. Think about that. It's anchored in him. So whether you're cleaning up the floor that day for the water, are you anchored in him? Man, I don't know how we're going to pay for this, but I know the one who is going to help us pay for this. I love the testimonies lately. I was just sitting with cousins at a wedding yesterday, Tony's cousins, and he retired at 51, and they're talking about how on paper they should have never been able to afford their insurance and all the things that people our age talk about when you retire, like how are you going to pay the copay until you're 62 or whatever. And she's like, I don't know but God. I don't know but God. She's like, this job opportunity came and this came, and she was still, I don't really know. So this week, let's choose Sabbath. Worship team, you can come. I think our worship set was even perfect for what we were talking about today. Stop the striving, cease, celebrate and remember God's goodness. This is in your notes on the app too. Worship and enjoy his presence. Restore. Spend intentional time with God and those you love. This isn't about doing what you have to do, but doing a little bit of what you want to do. Let me say that again. Not doing always what you have to do, but doing a little bit of what you want to do. Our culture teaches us that value comes from what we produce, but the kingdom teaches us that our value comes from whose we are. In this room, in our culture, we would all be of different stature, correct? According to our degrees or our employment or our whatever, where we live. I mean, maybe that's like that in Malone. I don't really know because I'm from Buckton, so I have a half a mile in the woods. But, right, there's a status that comes along with who we are, where we live, what we drive, who we are. That's not define us. The kingdom says whose we are defines them. And if you don't know Jesus that we're talking about, that we're celebrating, we would love for you to meet him today. We would love to talk to you. We'll have people up front to pray for you. Sabbath reminds us that before we accomplish anything for God, we simply belong to him. We all have a lot to do for him. There is work to do. But we have to know who we belong to. We have to take those moments to cease. So I'm giving you permission to cease from the striving. Be anchored in the Sabbath. Be anchored in the rest of Jesus. Choose to cease striving so you can experience the restoration that Christ has already provided. I want to say this over and over. If we could just grasp the concept of what his blood shed on the cross means for us. It's our healing. It's our restoration. It's the strongholds. Let's stand. And this morning, let's just give him a moment. Maybe you need to celebrate his goodness. Maybe this morning you need to be reminded of whose you belong to. Maybe you need a reminder of that it's time to take a break once a week. Even for a few hours. Where are you carving that out? Holy Spirit, I would just ask that you would convict us and direct us into a new intimacy with you. Father God, if you rested on the seventh day, we need to too. Show us. Show us what it looks like, God. Help us teach our children and our children's children, God. Let us be a people that doesn't just go with the rat race of our culture, but we choose to set today aside to be holy for you. Or if today's a work day and you have to rush off to work, another moment in a week where we say, no, yeah, I can't make that appointment today. That's my Sabbath time. I challenge us. I just see calendars being filled up with the word Sabbath in 4-hour blocks. God's not afraid of technology. He wants you to use it for him and to connect with him. Set the reminders. Do what you have to do to cease and pause. You are enough in him. He paid the price. He's going to take care of every bill, every situation. Every crop, every business interaction. You give it to him, and he will take care of you. We believe that today, God. And we pause to worship you again.